Okay, as Deborah and Bob both mentioned, if you'll save your questions till the end, then we'll try to answer any questions you might have. And I just wanted to start out, I think everybody here is aware that Jeanette Higby, who was our treasurer for about 10 years, resigned unexpectedly as treasurer for health reasons. And soon after that, Bob approached me to see if I would complete the remainder of her term through the end of this year. It so happened that the resignation was right around the time we had to start working on the budget. So, so I just wanted to go over the process a little bit that we went through before I get into the numbers. First of all, we got input from Heather on various line item expenses. We got input from Bob D'Angelo as to what his budget requirements would be for 2021. We also got input from Deborah, which we've already discussed briefly, as to her landscaping budget needs. We reviewed, and Bob and I have to say, we worked hand in hand on this thing. Could not have done it without him. He provided so much input, and I took the input, put it into reports. We had a lot of discussions. We went through 7 revisions of the budget to finally get to where we are now. And we reviewed every line item expense on the 2020 budget, and any expenses that were over or short, we made adjustments on the 2021 budget. The final revision, once we finished with this budget, was forwarded to Heather for review and also to Jennifer Smither, who is the accountant that handles all of our financials. And both Heather and Jennifer signed off on, I don't know if they didn't sign off, but they gave their blessing, said everything looked good. Jennifer reviewed all of the reserves that we presented and said they all made sense. She could back into the numbers, et cetera, et cetera. A copy, soon after we did that and we had their blessing on these documents, a copy of the budget, the sources and uses of funds statement, an analysis of each of our reserves, and a 4-year comparison was mailed out to all residents. If anybody did not get that in the mail, let me know. I can make sure you get it, but you should have gotten it. And it should have gotten in everybody's hands 8 to 9 days before the board meeting, so you had adequate time to review the numbers and formulate any questions you might have before the meeting. The next thing I wanted to talk about, it's the first sheet in the handout I gave you, the sources and uses of funds statement. This is really just a simple statement, but I think everyone needs to know and understand exactly, where your money goes and how much we're collecting and so forth. We collect annually $587,136 in association dues, and the way you arrive at this number is the quarterly dues we pay of $1,529 times 96 units, and then times 4 quarters in the year. So the next step in arriving at the maintenance income that we put into the budget, the first thing we have to do is subtract out the cable TV. As you know, part of our association dues goes to pay the cable TV for the basic boxes, etc. So we subtracted $48,999.96 out for cable TV. We subtracted out the amount of money that we came up with when we did our reserve analysis, which I'll go over in a minute. But we subtracted the $47,952 for the reserve allocations. And after you subtract that from the $587,136, you're left with $490,184.04, which is the maintenance revenue that we plug into the budget to cover our monthly operating expenses. If you divide that $490,184 by 12, there's $40,848.67 a month. So that's that. The next thing I wanted to discuss was the reserve analysis. And in reviewing the reserves, we found that several of the reserves had been funded up to roughly 100%. And as everyone knows, we've always approved only funding reserves to the 50% level. So by bringing all of the reserve funding back in line at the 50% funding level, we were able to pick up an additional $37,992 in income, which was rolled into the maintenance income and used to cover various increases in line item expenses. I'll go over that in more detail in a minute as well. What we did is we looked at the balance in each reserve, what it would be at year end, and carried that forward into 2021. Then we determined how much additional funding would be required over the remaining life expectancy of each project to fund each reserve at the 50% level. And I'll go over right now. If you go to the next page of your handout where it says reserve allocations, I just want to go over the first one there on the pool just to give you an idea, because the process we went through on that one to arrive at the monthly allocation is the same process we used for every reserve. We had an estimated replacement cost, which Bob supplied to me. We had the remaining life expectancy of 5 years. This was, if you had $31,080 estimated replacement cost, 50% funding is $15,540. We had $8,228 that would be in the account at year end, which means that there was an additional $7,312 required over the next 5 years. So you divide that by the 5 years, you get $1,462 a year, or $121.86, rounded up to $122 a month. So that sort of a simple explanation of how we analyzed each of these accounts. One thing I will point out is that estimated replacement cost, if there's ever any changes in that number, it changes the whole number down to the bottom on how much we have to fund. The reason I bring that up is we are putting off until after the first of the year to do a detailed reserve analysis, because we are in the process of a reserve study and we're waiting for the outcome of the reserve study. We also do not know what the outcome of the awnings are going to be. If for some reason the awnings aren't approved, then there's going to be additional monies in the budget to use for other things, as we pointed out. These numbers are not etched in stone, but based on the current, the current numbers that we're looking at, we think these are accurate numbers, and we fully expect that once the reserve study is done and everything, that we're going to have to go back in the first quarter of next year and alter these numbers as necessary. Whether we have to increase or decrease them, we kind of expect we might have to increase them. So we're going to be doing that, and that would mean that we'd have to recast the budget as well at that time. The last page I wanted to talk about, if you go to the last page of your handout, this sort of answers what you were asking about, Joseph. Where we picked up money over last year's budget, I already mentioned the $37,992 that's in the reserves that we picked up. We had a lot of work done last year on pool supply, on our pool repairs, and so we picked up another $11,000 there. We didn't feel that we need to budget as much this year as we did last year. Irrigation, everyone's pretty much aware that the irrigation was totally reworked. A lot of heads were replaced. I think we spent, like $15,000 on irrigation. So, we lowered that number substantially because we don't anticipate that much this year. Repairs, replacement, and services. This is Bob's building budget that he submitted. Last year he submitted $70,000. This year it was $58,800. So we picked up $11,000 there. Fountain maintenance, we picked up $1,000 on that. Pest control, $2,121. And we no longer need a meeting room, so we were budgeting $100 a month last year there, so we picked that up. So that was a total of $66,813 that we picked up. And you can see that where it was used below, our insurance increased by $5,610. Our lawn service with loyalty increased by $10,620. The landscape management we already talked about. That's $19,000. And we have another we picked up $17,000 in costs with the addition of LJ because what we were paying the maintenance personnel went from $15,000 to like $32,500. And we picked up another 1,040. Well, we didn't pick up, we used. I'm talking about number of money we used here, not what we picked up. So the total that we used was $53,770. And there is a copy of the budget attached for and many of you have probably reviewed that already, but anyone having any questions, I would open it up for questions now, and hopefully between one of us up here, we can answer your questions.